Imagine this. You're playing in front of thousands of home fans. You're the reigning world champion. You're also the defending Shanghai Masters champion. You produce 3 century breaks, including the highest break of the entire match. You fight your way back from behind. You level the score at 8-8. Everything inside the arena tells you the momentum is finally on your side. And then, you lose the next 2 frames. The match is over. So what happened? How can a player perform that well and still walk away defeated? At first glance, the answer seems obvious. Kyren Wilson simply played better, but the deeper you look, the less convincing that explanation becomes. Because statistically, Zhao Xintong didn't have a bad match at all. He produced some of the best snooker of the entire tournament. His long potting was fearless. His break building was spectacular. And every time he looked like he was about to take control, something stopped him. That something wasn't luck. It wasn't one incredible shot. It wasn't even one decisive frame. It was a pattern that repeated itself over nearly 5 hours of snooker. And once you notice it, the entire match starts to make sense. Before we get into the turning point, there's something important we need to understand. Most people remember this match because of Zhao's centuries. The highlights certainly do. They show the 139, the 135, the stunning long pots, the standing ovations. But highlights can be misleading, because highlights only show what happened when a player was at the table. They don't show what happened immediately afterwards. And that's exactly where Kyren Wilson won this match. Every time Zhao produced something extraordinary, Wilson found an answer. Not always with a century, not always with spectacular snooker, but almost always with the next frame. That's a huge difference. One player was creating unforgettable moments. The other was quietly collecting frames. And in snooker, frames win matches, not highlights. There's another detail that most people completely missed. At no point during the afternoon session did Zhao truly seize control. Yes, he won frames. Yes, he thrilled the crowd. But every single time it looked like the match might finally swing in his favor, Wilson pulled it back. It happened after the opening exchanges. It happened after Zhao's first century. It happened again later in the session. And by the time both players left the arena for the interval, something had quietly changed. The scoreboard still suggested a perfectly balanced contest, but psychologically, only one player had achieved what he wanted. Kyren Wilson had prevented Zhao Xintong from building momentum, and without momentum, even the most spectacular snooker becomes much harder to sustain. Now here's the really interesting question. If Zhao was playing well enough to make 3 centuries, why did he never feel in complete control of the match? Because the answer to that question explains everything that happened next. The answer lies in something that rarely appears in highlight reels. Momentum, not scoring, not century breaks. Momentum. Those two concepts often look identical, but they're not. A player can produce an incredible clearance, bring the crowd to its feet, and still lose control of the match. That's exactly what happened to Zhao Xintong. Throughout the afternoon, he kept creating explosive moments. A century here, a brilliant long red there. A stunning recovery shot that only a handful of players in the world could even attempt. Each one looked like the beginning of something bigger, but it never was, because Kyren Wilson kept ending every story before it had a chance to grow. This is what separates a great scorer from a great match player. A great scorer wins frames. A great match player controls what happens after those frames. Wilson understood that perfectly. He never tried to outshine Zhao. He never tried to prove he could make a bigger break. Instead, he focused on something much simpler, winning the next opportunity, again and again and again. Imagine spending 10 minutes producing a magnificent century. The crowd erupts. Your confidence grows. You return to your chair believing you've finally shifted the momentum. Then your opponent walks to the table, plays a composed 50 break, wins the next frame, and suddenly nothing has changed. Now imagine that happening, not once, but several times during the same match. That's mentally exhausting. Eventually, you stop feeling like you're chasing victory. You start feeling like you're chasing your opponent. And those are 2 completely different matches. By the second session, that pressure had quietly moved from Kyren Wilson to Zhao Xintong. Not because Zhao was missing easy balls. He wasn't. Not because his scoring disappeared. It didn't. He was still producing world-class snooker. But every great visit now carried extra weight, because he knew one thing: if he failed, even once, Wilson would probably punish him. That's a terrible feeling to have against one of the toughest competitors in professional snooker. And then came the moment everyone remembers, 8-8. If you only watch the scoreboard, this looked like the turning point, the perfect comeback. The home crowd was alive again. Zhao had erased the deficit. The momentum finally seemed to belong to him, or did it? Because if you look closely, the player who had actually been controlling the match hadn't changed at all. Kyren Wilson remained calm. His body language never changed. His decision-making never changed. His pace never changed. To him, 8-8 wasn't the start of a comeback. It was simply the next frame. And that mindset may have been the biggest difference between the two players. Most fans believe the match was decided in the final 2 frames. I don't think it was. I think it was decided much earlier. Because by the time the score reached 8-8, one player was trying to complete an incredible comeback. The other had been preparing for that exact moment all afternoon. And the statistics prove it. If I told you before the match that one player would make 3 centuries, produce the highest break of the day, fight back to 8-8, and still lose, most people would probably say the difference came down to one mistake, one missed pot, one unlucky kick, one bad safety, but that's not what happened. The numbers tell a completely different story. The final score says 10-8. That sounds close. It feels close. It even looked close while watching the match. But once you look beyond the scoreboard, the illusion disappears. Over 18 frames, Kyren Wilson scored 1,167 points. Zhao Xintong scored 881. That's a gap of almost 300 points. For a match decided by only 2 frames, that's enormous. It tells us something the score never could. Wilson wasn't stealing frames, he was controlling them. Now let's look at another statistic. Both players made 3 century breaks. At first, that sounds perfectly balanced. But championships aren't won by your biggest breaks. They're won by what happens between them. Wilson produced 10 breaks over 50. Zhao managed 6. That means Wilson was creating scoring opportunities almost every single frame. He didn't need to produce fireworks. He simply refused to waste chances. And that's where this match becomes really interesting. Most fans remember Zhao's centuries. Very few remember Wilson's 67, or his 74, or his 82. Those breaks don't appear in YouTube thumbnails. They don't go viral, but they win tournaments. Because every one of them quietly removed another frame from Zhao's reach. Think about the difference. A century makes headlines. A perfectly timed 68 often doesn't. But on the scoreboard, both count exactly the same. 1 frame. And Kyren Wilson kept collecting those frames, one after another, without ever needing to dominate the highlights. This is why professional players often talk about match play instead of shot making. The public remembers brilliance. Champions remember efficiency. Kyren wasn't trying to produce the most spectacular snooker. He was trying to make the match as difficult as possible for Zhao. And by the final hour, it had become exactly that. So by now, we know something important. Zhao didn't lose because he played badly. He lost despite playing brilliantly. Which raises one final question. What did Kyren Wilson have that Zhao Xintong didn't? Because the answer has nothing to do with potting ability. It has everything to do with becoming a champion. Most people think championships are won by talent, and to reach this level, that's absolutely true. Both Kyren Wilson and Zhao Xintong possess extraordinary talent. Both can produce impossible long pots. Both can compile centuries almost at will. Both have already proven they belong among the very best players in the world. So talent wasn't the difference. The difference appeared when the match stopped being about shot making and started becoming about decision making. There's a saying in professional sport: pressure doesn't create character, it reveals it. This semifinal was a perfect example. Every frame became slightly more important than the last. Every safety exchange carried a little more weight. Every missed positional angle became a little more expensive. And as the pressure increased, Kyren Wilson became calmer, not more aggressive, not more spectacular, just calmer. Watch his body language during the closing stages. He wasn't rushing around the table. He wasn't forcing difficult reds. He wasn't chasing applause from the crowd. Everything looked controlled, measured, purposeful. It was almost as if he had already accepted one simple truth. If I keep making the right decisions, the chances will come. And eventually, they did. Zhao approached the same situation very differently. Not because he lacked experience, not because he panicked, But because he was being asked to do something almost impossible, he had to keep producing extraordinary snooker just to stay level. Think about that for a moment. Most players produce one brilliant clearance, and suddenly the pressure disappears. Zhao produced a brilliant clearance, and the pressure stayed exactly the same. That slowly changes the way you think. Instead of playing to win, you begin playing because you know you can't afford to lose the next frame. It's a tiny psychological shift, but at this level, tiny shifts decide championships. And that's why I don't believe this match was won by the centuries, or by the statistics, or even by the final 2 frames. I think it was won much earlier, when Kyren Wilson quietly convinced Zhao that every comeback would require something extraordinary. Once a player starts believing that, they begin taking risks they normally wouldn't. They begin searching for perfect shots instead of good decisions. And that's exactly where elite match players take control. When the final black disappeared into the pocket, the scoreboard showed 10-8. But that number doesn't tell the real story. The real story is that Kyren Wilson never allowed the match to be played on Zhao Xintong's terms. He dictated the emotional rhythm. He dictated the pressure. He dictated the moments that mattered. And in the end, that's why he deserved to reach the Shanghai Masters final. In the end, this wasn't a story about who made the biggest breaks. It wasn't even a story about who played the most spectacular snooker. It was a story about something much harder to see: momentum, patience, decision-making. Zhao Xintong gave the crowd unforgettable moments. Kyren Wilson gave himself something even more valuable: the final. And sometimes, that's the only statistic that really matters.